Hello everyone, this is Chao. Welcome back to my channel. Today I want to discuss with you everything about Tailwind CSS and Angular. Specifically Angular applications, not Angular workspaces, not Angular libraries, because the use case or the usage of Tailwind CSS in those cases is a little bit different. It has a little bit of variety to it. It depends on the projects. So they cut it out of scope of this video. The agenda for today is a brief history of Tailwind CSS and Angular. Then we're going to go through installations and setting up Tailwind CSS using the latest version of Tailwind and the latest version of Angular, which is version 12. Then we're going to talk about Tailwind CSS modes, which is AOT and Jet. Then, last but not least, we'll talk about the related Angular features that you're going to be using to use Tailwind CSS along with Angular, and we will talk about how to do that efficiently. All right, so let's get started. And also, I assume that you already know Tailwind CSS and you already know Angular, and you want to use these technologies together, right? So, just a little bit of background. Tailwind CSS is a post CSS plugin, right? And Angular, specifically Angular CLI projects, we have a concept called builder. So when you invoke, when you run like ng-serve or when you run ng-build, under the hood, the Angular CLI actually invokes Webpack, and they have their own like built-in Webpack configuration. The purpose is that the consumers, which is us, don't have to worry about it. However, with Tailwind CSS, because it is a post CSS plugin, so it has to be built into the pipeline, the compilation pipeline somehow. So I just want to show you in an Angular CLI project. If you go to angular.json file, and if you look at the architect of your project, so I have my projects right here under architect, under build, there's a builder, and this builder build Angular or Angular dev kit / build Angular. If you look for this builder on GitHub, you will see that they have the Webpack configuration and stuff like that to build the Angular application for you. So somehow, if you want to get Tailwind CSS to work, somehow you or the Angular CLI has to work the Tailwind CSS plugin into the build pipeline one way or another, right? So up until Angular 11.2, you're gonna have to do this manually, aka you're gonna have to have like a custom Webpack configuration, and you have to have a different builder to actually accept that custom Webpack config. And then you have to work like Tailwind CSS in that custom Webpack config to have Tailwind CSS in your compilation pipeline. It is tedious, and it's never a silver bullet. It's like one might work for this project, it's not gonna work for your client's project, and things like that happen. And then there's like NX workspace, right? So at that point, people tend to build schematics to help with this process of adding Tailwind CSS to Angular applications. Specifically, there's one that I worked on, which is ng-neat Tailwind. So this schematic that will do all that tedious work for you. We set up Tailwind, we install Tailwind, like update the files that needs to be updated, all that just to have like one command and you're good to go with Tailwind CSS in Angular applications. There's a couple of others schematics like ngx Tailwind, and stuff like that. So that is before Angular 11.2. Why Angular 11.2? So in Angular 11.2 release, the Angular CLI team added support for Tailwind CSS out of the box. What this means is that you don't have to be doing anything different than just install Tailwind CSS as a dependency. initialize your Tailwind configuration JS file, and then the Angular CLI will detect that file and add Tailwind CSS to your compilation pipeline for you, without any custom webpack, without any customization that you have to be doing, without any third-party builder. You use Angular CLI builder out of the box. So quote unquote official support for Tailwind. So I think this is a pretty fair and reasonable trade-off to be able to use official support from the Angular CLI team. So that's the reason why the engineered Tailwind schematics has not been received love. So I hope to find some time to go back to the issues and guide people to use the official solution from the Angular CLI team. Right, so that's the history. So from 11.2, you don't need any additional tools to help get Tailwind CSS started with Angular applications. All right. So what I have here is an Angular CLI project created with Angular CLI, Angular 12 as of this moment, so Angular 12. And we're gonna start with installation. So let's just start with install Tailwind. And by the way, I have the dev server running here, which is the bare minimum of an Angular application. Right, so I'm gonna stop my dev server. I'm gonna install Tailwind as a dev dependency. Again, Tailwind CSS is part of your build pipeline or compilation pipeline, so it is just a dev dependency. So once it's done, next thing you need to do is to set up Tailwind CSS with Angular. The first thing you need is a Tailwind configuration file, which is tailwind.config.js. You can create this file manually by hand, or you can use the Tailwind CSS CLI to initialize one for you, which I'm going to do. So you run npx Tailwind CSS init. And then it's going to create a Tailwind CSS config file for you, and it's going to put that file on the root because I ran this command at the root directory. So you can name this file however you want, but Angular CLI actually detects tailwind.config.js file or some form or some shape or form of this. I'm going to look it up and I'm going to update the description of the video about what exactly Angular CLI is looking for. But for now, we're going to stick with the default tailwind.config.js, which at this point, having this file, having Tailwind CSS installed, you turned on the Tailwind CSS build pipeline with the Angular CLI. All right, this is the generated Tailwind configuration. The next thing that we need to do is we need to import the base styles from Tailwind CSS. I'm using SCSS, but if you're using CSS, you can use the Tailwind directive. If you're using SCSS, then use the import syntax from Tailwind CSS base components utilities save. Now, if I were to start my application now, my application now has Tailwinds, and you will see the styles will be applied to Tailwind CSS. Basically, the base styles will reset everything. Like this is no longer a header, stuff like that. Everything will be reset because of the Tailwind CSS. It's getting applied. Right, if I refresh, there we go. So all of this has been reset. And one thing you notice that the style CSS is pretty heavy. It's 3.49 megabytes. The reason why is we do not set up any purging for Tailwind CSS. For those who don't know, purging means removing unused classes. At this point, we don't use or we haven't used any classes yet from Tailwind CSS. So we should not be getting this much CSS. Now, this is a good time to start talking about modes. So Tailwind CSS has two modes. One is AOT, which is the default, or ahead of time, like it is the default. Or you can have JIT. JIT is just in time. So JIT is a new mode, or a new basically JIT compiler that is going to be faster, it's going to be more flexible, and it ensures the styles or the classes that you use in development matches with the classes will be generated for production. Why is that? So AOT means ahead of time. So ahead of time is that, okay, Tailwind is gonna compile everything, every classes from Tailwind CSS, and then combine that with purge. Purge, we say, okay, I have all these classes, and then now in your application, you don't use class ABC. I'm gonna purge ABC out of all of these generated classes. So because it generates all the class and then it purge some of these classes, the build time of using the AOT mode is really long, because I mean it has to compile everything. You see that 3.5 megabytes. Not if you use like plugins, if you extend your theme and stuff like that, it's gonna get a little bit longer. So that's AOT, and it's not very trivial to use as well, because to be able to purge in production, the no environment has to be production. Angular CLI does not set this environment variable, so you're gonna have to set it yourself to like production, and then run ng build. So you have to do this to purge in production and not purge in development. Right now you have that kind of like differentiation between development and production. So you have a chance, you have a risk of having different classes or missing classes in production that you were using in development, because things might get purged incorrectly. So that's AOT. And what's the value for purge? Basically, it is an array of paths, an array of files, or an array of clubs that you point to where you want Tailwind CSS to look for to purge. So in this case, it's going to be everything inside of source that is a TypeScript file or HTML file. So that is AOT mode. Right, now what is JIT? So if we use JIT, what JIT means is that, okay, I'm gonna look at your files, and then I'm going to just generate what you use. So it does not have to compile everything, right? So now it just looks at the files and say, okay, you use ABC. I'm gonna generate ABC for you. And because it is compiled, Tailwind CSS just-in-time mode actually has some more features that the AOT does not. So you can read everything about this in the documentations of Tailwind CSS. Are there still use cases for AOT mode? Yes, there are. Again, the Tailwind CSS documentations talk about this as well. All right, so now I'm gonna stop the server. I'm gonna rerun the server, and you will see the styles of CSS is less, and like significantly less, and the build time is actually faster. That's it, it's done. And then the styles is 11.93, and my page still looks the same. It still generates the right amount, the correct amount of CSS that I am using. So that is just in time mode. Right now, people ask, okay, then how does Tailwind know when we change or when we update the file, when we have changes in the files that we updating? Well, I'm glad you asked. So JIT, or just in time, actually depends on, or not depends on, it looks for a environment variable called process.env.tailwind mode. So it's gonna look for this environment variable. I'm gonna just quickly have a console log of that right there. So it will look for this file, looks for this environment variable, and just want to show you when you run ngserve, the environment variable values will be watch. If you run ng build, the environment variable value is build. So the Angular CLI actually sets this environment variable for you based on when you run serve or when you run build. So when you run serve, it's going to be watch. It has the value of watch. So watch will tell Tailwind to, hey, you need to spawn a watcher to watch for these files for change. All right. So in jet mode, it doesn't have the concept of purging, but then because I guess Tailwind CSS kind of reused this property name purge, but it just looks for these files to watch instead of purging. So that's the watch mode. What about build mode? Build mode means no watcher. You build once. That's it. So that's jet mode, and that's it. This is all you need to set up just-in-time mode in Angular application. If you're using VS Code and the latest version of the Tailwind CSS plugin or extension, you're good to go. But if you are WebStorm users, or if you are like a Jetbrains users like me, we do have the Tailwind CSS plugin built in. However, there is a bug with the just-in-time mode, and it will not give you any intelligence. So if we go to, I'm going to remove all my template for now. If we go to my templates and I put in and try to use like these classes, it will not like give me intelligence. One trick you can do is to say process.env.tailwind mode. If I have this value, then use jet mode. If I don't use anything. Basically, it always has values, so it always jet mode. But now we have this expression here in the mode. So Tailwind CSS plugin of Jetbrains will say, oh, we don't know what mode he's using, so let's just give him the intelligence. So now if I go back here and say P, hopefully it shows the intelligence for me right there, right? So now I have a bunt. It's going to be px4, py5, actually px2, py4, one routed, text white, right? Text white, bg blue 400, and when hover, bg blue 600, and type of bunt. And inside of this, I'm gonna have Tailwind bunt. I'm gonna close that, save. I'm gonna restart my dev server. And this is not a Tailwind CSS tutorial, so I'm gonna just use all of that. Right, now if I refresh, I have my bunt. It looks a little bit ugly, but that's fine. Actually, I think I got this backward, so let's just make that. There we go. Right, so now I have my bunt, and it has that hover and everything, and my styles still stay very, very low at 12.34 kilobytes, and this is a lot better in the build, in the production build. It's like things like 3 or 4 kilobytes with all the optimization and stuff like that. Yep. So now this is it. You're good to go with Tailwind CSS. And now let's assume that I want to have like a parent wrapper around my bun to have a little bit of padding, because now my buns is touching the edge or the edges of the window. I don't like it, so I'm gonna put in the div. I'm gonna give this div a padding of 4. I'm gonna move my button inside that. Now I have some padding, all right, which is completely good, completely fine. But then now you say, now for some reason my component kind of needs this like wrapper div for no reason. Can I just use something else? Yes, you can. You can use the host, basically the component tag element, or the host root, the host element as a wrapper. Then you're wondering, how do I apply the class on the host? So there are a couple of ways to use Tailwind CSS with the host. The first way is to use host binding. So you can host binding to the class with a specific class, with one single specific class, and you set that to true. Right now, this is basically I'm saying, hey, on the host, I want to bind p4 to the class attribute. That's it. That's what you're saying here. All right, and let me go to that. So app root, you see that now I have that class p4 on my app root, which is the host. But then it's not. I guess it's not really working, right? The reason why is that the default display of a host element in Angular is inline. You want this to be a block element or a flex element, basically a block element, not inline. So what you can do here, and again, you cannot just add another class here. It doesn't work like that. So this syntax is for single class, but if you want to have more than one classes, then just bind to class. Instead of a boolean, give it a string of all your classes and save. And now it will work. So you see that right there, block p4. And now your host element becomes a wrapper. You can also have a getter. So you can have a getter that's return that if you like to. And this still works the same way. You can have getter to have like a more dynamic situation, but this is host binding. What is the other way? The other way is to use the apply directive on the host selector. So if we go to my styles, I say host, and I say apply p4 and apply block, save, and everything still works. If you look at the styles on your DevTools, you will see that those styles get applied. If I change this to 2, that 1 rem will go back to 0.5 rem, right? So you can use either way. I tend to use this more because using classes is a little bit more performant, because you see this right here. If you use apply, it will apply a new style of padding 1 rem. But if you use p4, it reuses the class p4. So it's just preference and depends on the use cases. But yeah, and again, if you want all of your CSS or all of your classes in the CSS file or in the SCSS files, then you can use apply. That's no problem at all. Right, so what's next? Next, I want to talk about dynamic classes. So now I want to change my button color based on something. Now I'm gonna have just a quick, easy button types of primary and danger, right? And I have button type of default to primary. I'm gonna have a select here, and this select will have an ng model of button type, and in the option ng4 let type of button types by that to the value and render that. I'm gonna give this a little bit of styling, so p2 routed border black, save. Have that. Now I want to add a little bit of gap to my wrapper, so I'll say gap 4. Here we go. Right, next is I want to change the danger and turn my Tailwind button to red. So to do that, we're going to just use the class binding syntax. So class, and I'm going to use the array syntax. So my button type equals primary. If it is equal primary, I have those, so I'm just going to put these in string. Then if it's not, then I'll just say red. Save. Right now, I've turned to danger. my red, and if I turn to blue, primary, I have my blue. So this is the correct way of using dynamic classes with Tailwind CSS. You want your whole class like this, because some people might do something like this. So I'm just gonna go back to this, and I'm gonna stop my server as if I never wrote that array syntax. So if I put back this. Some people might do this. So I have blue there. I have like they string interpolate the color from Tailwind CSS using this syntax. So it's a primary. It's gonna be blue, or it's gonna be red. Oops. Okay. Blue, red. There. And now I'm gonna start my server. You see that is not actually working. See that right there? So the reason why is because these the Tailwind just-in-time compiler cannot determine what class to generate here. Right? This is an expression they cannot say. I don't know what to generate. So do not use string interpolation with dynamic class. Like for dynamic class use cases with Tailwind CSS, use the array syntax, right, which allows you to have multiple classes for a single case. And now my button is back, right? All right, so I think that's all that I have today. Let me know if you have any question. Comment down below if you have any questions. All right, I'll see you in the next.